So this is a really good point, and there's a lot of transferable skills here. And I think I can give a couple of examples of how if you're a traditional CNC company, most of them are three axis, right? Just take the next logical step. Go from three axis to five axis, right? There's additional complexity here, but it's a good skill to pick up. If you're a 5x, you're already doing 5 axis and you've kind of mastered it, right? You're already halfway there to be an automation company, right? And actually, you're also there to start thinking about uh, going from subtractive manufacturing to additive manufacturing. Um, and especially, again, we like robots, so I'm really saying robotic additive manufacturing is much more exciting than traditional sort of additive as we think about it. So you can see, there's steps you can take to sort of go up the stack, and these worlds are starting to blur, right? It's not just about subtractive or additive. It's about actually how do you combine both to achieve the outcome that you need. Additive is still very young, right? It's only like 2-3% of the overall manufacturing industry. It's nothing, right? It's this tiny part of that massive manufacturing industry. So there's incredible amount of, now they're growing very fast. So that's where a lot of exciting opportunities tend to be, where there is growth. So again, if you're a subtractive company, you should be looking at how do I bring in some additive capability into the mix? How do I bring in some automation into the mix? Because it's that combined solution where the advantages are going to start. So if you don't evolve, and if you only stay as a three-axis machine, a CNC company, naturally you will struggle. And actually, it's happening. I've seen so many of these like mom and pop shops not able to make that transition. But my message is that it is possible to do that if you kind of take this step by step approach. And actually, right now, today, this may not have been true 2 years ago, 3 years ago, but in the current environment, finally people have woken up and they understand the importance of supply chain assurance, local manufacturing, and why it's important, right? So I think it's actually one of the best times to be in US. This is, I would say, a renaissance in advanced manufacturing in the US, right? We had that again in the 60s, 70s, 80s. It was great. Then we lost a huge amount of manufacturing jobs to overseas. But now they're coming back, but we don't want to bring back the old way, right? The only way we can compete globally is where we raise the bar, right? Internally at Orbital, this is one of our mottos: raise the standard, right? So we as a country, when it comes to automation and manufacturing, we need to raise our standard, which means we need to train everybody. Everybody, should be learning robotics. Like that, that should be a requirement. I would say even in high schools, right? High schools, community colleges, 4-year colleges. Everybody should have access to robots. Everybody should be learning how to program them.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I think one of the only reasons that robotics hasn't had as big of an impact as, like, say, for instance, something like AI is just because the uh, investment is so much higher, right? Like, if AI deploys tomorrow and they charge $30 a month, anybody in the world can pretty much afford it. At least anybody in the U.S., right? They can afford it. You know, with that being said, automation is slowly ticking up and taking over. Like, it's into the future. It's going to be the same as the discussions we're having with AI and how we're talking about them taking jobs or how jobs are going to change. The exact same things happening with automation, and the discussions have been happening. But I think the technologies are getting there, and I think over the course of the next like 10 years, people are going to start becoming educated enough with things like robotics, like you mentioned, like people should have more access to robotics. Well, it's definitely, even since in the past, since I was in high school, like We didn't have a robot in our high school, but I'm starting to hear of multiple like high school level classes having some type of introductory to robotics, um, which is going to change the landscape of the skill level of the individuals that are coming into the industry, as well as the gap closing on the technological side of things just becoming easier to program, right? And at some point in time, we might be able to talk to a chat GPT and have it program a robot for us or program some PLC code to do something. Um, those things are just a matter of time.
It's already happening, and you're hitting it on the nail, right? This is the problem. If you want robotics to be accessible to the masses, to everybody, it needs to be easier to program, right? And the AI tools are actually going to help make that transition and accelerate that transition, so that you know the barrier to entry is lower,
Hmm.
meaning that many more people can jump in
Hmm.
and start uh, make becoming useful, productive with robots.
Yeah.
Now, there is always this advanced high-end sector, which is then become more specialized.
Hmm.
But this low end is very important because this is what pulls people in, right?
Hmm.
When people are young and they're thinking about careers, you know, so my personal job, my favorite class in college was where we had hardware instruments to play with, right?
Yeah.
So, and we've shipped actually some of our systems to universities, and the professors have been telling us that the interest in their classes have skyrocketed because the students get to play with actual robots,
Right.
right? So we need to sort of make this exciting, make this accessible. It's not intimidating, right? That anybody can do it, right? You can do it. High school kids can do it. Honestly, we've had middle school kids who can do this, right? Like
Right.
it's not as intimidating as it
Yeah.
looks, and we need to broaden that pool of potential people who want to be working on this as their career.